Thank you very much for watching this short film about Sport England's local delivery pilots. You've probably been to one of the workshops. Over 700 people did at 16 locations right across England. And my staff team at Sport England came back fizzing with excitement at the input that they'd received. I was really sorry that I was only able to be at that first one. So I wanted to use this opportunity to give you some of the general messages to think about as you're now deciding whether or not you want to put in an expression of interest. The very first thing that you're probably thinking about is whether you want to put in one of those expressions of interest. Is this really for you? What I would say is that this is a very big decision for you and your partners in the particular geography that you have in mind. This is something that needs to be in the top 2 or 3 priorities for the place you're thinking about for the next 3 or 4 years. So it's a very big choice. You need to be confident that you've got leadership or the ability to get it, that the geography is going to be definable in some way, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. And also that the whole of the system is going to come with you. This isn't going to work if it's just about sport and physical activity. The main decision makers in your system, the main actors in your place, need to be willing to come with you on this journey. I've said this is about the whole system in your place, and that can be a hard thing to get your head round. If you came to one of the pilot workshops, you will have seen some fantastic diagrams that show you the layers in the system. But the main thing to think about is it's not just about changing the individual's behaviour. It's about changing all the things around them that affect that behaviour. So their social relationships, their family and their friends. The physical environment in which they decide whether they walk or run or cycle or play any sport. Perhaps the policy environment, so the help that a local authority or some other body in your place is willing to give them. Think about how all of those elements in the system can come together so that you can help people get more active or play more sport. You don't need me to tell you that partnership working can be really difficult. And the bigger the challenge, the harder it is. So this is going to be a very particular way of working. It's way beyond a joint project. We'll be starting by trying to make sure that your outcomes and our outcomes are genuinely aligned. We don't have to start by describing them in the same way, but we do ultimately have to mean the same things. So this will be a big, challenging project. There'll be moments when you walk out of rooms thinking, I don't know why I'm doing this. But frankly, if it's not that difficult, it isn't going to be worthwhile. And we are going to measure and evaluate the life out of these projects because the whole point is to learn. And that's going to be challenging for you and challenging for us because not everything will work. And we are going to have to learn to showcase, dismantle, explain our failures just in the same way as we do our successes, because we'll learn just as much from them. So when you think, do I want to do this? Bear in mind, it is going to be challenging. It's a particular type of partnership, and we're all going to have to open ourselves up to a high level of scrutiny. One of the things you might be thinking about is what happens if I say no to this? What happens if I start to write or I begin to talk to my partners and I just think this isn't going to be right for us? I would really encourage you at that stage not to put in an expression of interest. This is such a big decision that it's as important that you say no if it's not right for you, perhaps not right for you at this particular time, than if you say, well, I better just give it a go. So please feel free to say, this isn't for me today, but I'd still like to understand what's going on. I'd still like to be involved in the learning. You will have heard at the workshops that we're serious about creating a learning community around the places we do choose as the pilots. I want to take this opportunity to reassure you that that is a very serious commitment. So serious, in fact, that alongside assessing the expressions of interest, I've challenged our team here to think about how they start that process of the learning community. It's not going to come along at the end, it will be there right through the pilot process. So if you're wondering if this is right for you and thinking the balance for you might be it's not, that doesn't mean you won't be able to learn from it. The absolute priority audience in our local pilots is going to be people who are inactive now or people from underrepresented groups. So those groups that don't naturally gravitate towards sport and physical activity in the same numbers. They need to be your central priority. And this can be quite hard. This is one of the biggest challenges we face because we know that whenever we support partners to put on activity, it's the people who are most closely connected with it, who relate to it most easily, who arrive first. You have to think really carefully to attract the frightened, the sceptical, the disinterested, the people who think this isn't for them. But this is what these pilots are about, and those are the audiences that we want you to think hard about in your place. One of the fundamental principles of these local pilots are the people we're trying to reach. And they're the people who don't naturally come to sport, who don't naturally come to physical activity in really great numbers. And you will know, as well as we do, that when you look at the statistics, there are some really stubborn inequalities. They've been there for a very long time, in many cases since we started measuring. So it is really concerning and genuinely upsets me that in the lowest socio-economic groups, our levels of inactivity are 40%, and in our highest, they're just 17%. It's a really great illustration of why this pilot, the thing you are thinking about, needs to work in a different way. If we do small and incremental change, the chances are that we might shift the dial a little bit, but the inequalities will stay the same. We cannot let that happen. I recognise that you're going to need to think really carefully about how you define your place. And one of the questions I know we got asked repeatedly throughout the workshops was, how big do you want it to be? Or how small can I make it? I really mean it when I say that's up to you, but we can give you some indications that might help you think about it. Because what we're trying to demonstrate here is that change is possible on a population-wide scale. A few streets is just not going to be enough. It needs to be something of a decent size. But if you're sitting in a massive region with lots of local authorities there, the chances are it will be very difficult to deliver the kind of deep-rooted change, multi-layered change that we're talking about. So it needs to be a decent size, but not so big that you can't bring it all together. So I would say also, think really carefully, not just about organisational boundaries and physical geography. Think about how people in your communities define their geography. What do they say? Where do they draw their boundaries? And let that guide you when you come to draw yours. One of the things you'll need to do is to really think about what you know about the audiences you're trying to reach. And it's very tempting when you do that in a sport context to see everything through the lens of sport. So don't think of them as runners or footballers or swimmers. Think of them as people who live in your place with their complex economic, social, family, geographical needs. All of that goes into the understanding of the audience. And you know we really prioritise insight and we think it's really important. But please don't think that you have to come to us at this stage knowing absolutely everything. One of the early stages of this project, and one of the things we will help you with, is the insight. It's what we're here for. But do ask the right questions. That's what we'll be looking for in the expression of interest. Are you trying to find out the right things about your audience? So if you're picking up your pen and thinking, what am I going to write? Please start with the aspirations for your place. Don't tell us about the sport. Don't tell us about the physical activity. Say what you want to happen to and for the people who live in your place and how sport and physical activity might contribute to that. If we get it that way round, then that alignment of outcomes and a really successful pilot is much more likely to happen. And please be bold. One of the truly inspiring things for me when I work with local leaders is how passionately they want to transform or just improve the lives of the people where they live and work. So be bold, be aspirational, and start with what you feel the people who live in your place would really want you to write. I hope the remarks I've made have been of some use to you, because I recognise this is a really big decision. But what I would say, just to wind up, is that when people ask me, what's the part of the new strategy that I feel most excited about, my honest answer is this. It is the local pilots. This is where we're going to prove whether this population-wide change can be done or not, how you do it or not. And so it really is central to everything we're trying to demonstrate. Everything to do with getting inactive people active. Everything to do with tackling those stubborn inequalities. And I know working locally, you come up against those day after day after day. So if, having been to the workshop, listened to me today, you feel this is for you, please do go for it, because this is an opportunity to make a really big difference.